Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the Mining Podcast. And today's guest is Tim Harrison, the Managing Director of Ionic Rare Earths, who are focused on developing its flagship Makuutu Rare Earths project in Uganda into a significant low-cost supply of high-value critical and heavy rare earths. Tim's a chemical and metallurgist by background with a track record across both mineral processing and hydrometallurgy across a wide range of commodities. So he's obviously a very technical person in the processing field, and he's obviously here to tell us more about Ionic Rare Earths. So let's welcome Tim to the podcast. How you doing, Tim?
Yeah, good, Rob. Thanks for having me.
No, and I appreciate your time. I know you've been pretty busy over there in Melbourne. So yeah, appreciate your time in taking the time to do this podcast. Before we begin, I just wonder if you can give our audience a background about yourself, an overview of your career. As I mentioned, that you're a chemical engineer and been in metallurgy as your background. So I just wondered if you can tell us a little bit about your career, how it's developed to where you are today.
Yeah, okay, Rob. So I studied chemical engineering at university in Adelaide. Over 20 years now in the mining industry. I've worked in all sorts of different commodities, a lot of time working in copper and gold, working in hydrometallurgical applications in copper, gold, uranium, spent some time with WMC and BHP doing a lot of work on Olympic Dam. Then went and did some work with Fleur Engineering, so building copper gold mines in Australia, and after that restarted a copper gold asset up in Queensland with Ivanhoe, and spent some time then with Cleantech for 5 years on looking at a nickel laterite deposit in New South Wales. The Cyeston project, which was then rebadged at the Sunrise project. And then in early 2020, came and joined Ionic Rare Earths with what's the Makuutu project, and focusing on bringing Makuutu into production, which has been a great opportunity and very exciting.
So obviously you've been promoted into the managing director's role. How has your career sort of led you into that level of position, obviously in executive management and obviously the managing director?
Yeah, look, as I mentioned, I initially came on. I came on in early 2020 initially as the project manager, and I suppose I had a passion to see the project sort of move from those initial phases of the project through the scoping study and try and drive it towards ultimately what we hope is going to be a producing asset in the next 18 months to 2 years. Look, I don't know if there's a particular secret. I think I've found my fit, and I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed working with the team. I've enjoyed working with a smaller project in quite a lean environment, where we really have had to focus on moving very quickly to advance the project, dealing with a lot of the challenges of COVID, and being able to sort of maintain the schedule and focus of the project team to just work through the scoping study and now delivering a feasibility study, and I suppose along the way looking at how we can make the most out of the asset at Makuutu.
Yeah, and I wondered if you can just tell us a little bit about obviously the company, the project, a little bit more detail, and also what attracted you to the project.
Yeah, so Ionic Rare Earths, we have the Makuutu Rare Earth project, which is an ionic adsorption clay deposit. So these are very, very rare deposits, highly strategic assets that are prevalent in Southeast Asia and, predominantly southern China. They're the source of the bulk of the world's current heavy rare earth production capacity. effectively the rare earths exist in the clay in a chemical bond. So they're not as a mineral. The minerals have been broken down by Mother Nature over millions of years. And with rising and lowering of water tables, the rare earths are then bonded to the aluminosilicates. And one of the big attractions of the ionic adsorption clays are that they've got very simple metallurgy relative to, and simple processing, low capital processing relative to a lot of the hard rock rare earth projects. And they also do produce a higher value basket, which is richer in heavy rare earths. So, I suppose one of the things that attracted me to Ionic and Makuutu was the nature of the mineralization, the fact that it was such a strategic deposit, the fact it's a very rare type of deposit outside of southern China and Southeast Asia. So I saw an opportunity to be part of something, driving a low capital project, a modular project into production, and what we expect is going to be a very profitable asset as well.
Obviously, rare earths are fast becoming a critical mineral, essentially in the development of clean technologies. How does your Makuutu project differ to others and support the rare earths market?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, being an ionic adsorption clay, it does produce a different type of basket, different composition of individual rare earth elements to some of the more commonly known rare earth projects out there. So you've got Lynas and MP Materials. They typically make a mineral concentrate that's dominated by light rare earths. They have very small compositions of heavy rare earths. MP Materials is about 1% heavy rare earths. Lynas is about 4% heavy rare earths. So they're vastly different to Makuutu, which is about 44% heavy rare earths. So the strategic appeal of the asset and the ability to supply for a very low capital hurdle a wide array of the individual heavy rare earth elements that are critical for the transition to low carbon technologies, net zero carbon initiatives, EVs and offshore wind turbines, for example. But there's also a suite of heavy rare earth elements that are critical for 5G communication and key military and defence applications. So they do have a wide number of specific applications. In addition to that, there's a number of medical applications where substitution is not an option. And realistically, the world is looking for new supplies of heavy rare earths to be able to sort of keep those applications going and to ensure that I suppose Western economies have access to those heavy rare earths into the future, because they are going to be increasingly more difficult to find.
And who is the end user with your particular project and market, and the market that you're after, whether that's obviously over this side of the world or over your side of the world? Who's the sort of end user client?
Yeah, so Rob, we've got a number of potential end users. Obviously, the electric vehicle revolution is driven by a vast number of permanent magnet motors. So you can't have the motors without the rare earths. And whilst we've watched with a lot of interest the boom in lithium-ion battery capacity, we haven't seen anywhere near the same capacity being rolled out on motors and permanent magnets. And so that's a key area and opportunity for the company. We've got 33% of our basket being neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, which are the 4 key magnet rare earths that go into those permanent magnets for EVs. But beyond EVs, you've got the offshore wind turbines, the generators, the big magnets that go into the direct drive offshore wind turbines. that's potentially a massive opportunity for specifically a project like Makuutu, which has the ability to, based upon the upside case of the scoping study, Makuutu by 2050 has the potential to supply about 90 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity. So it is a project of significant appeal when it comes to being a key facilitator in a portion of the world's move towards a net zero carbon future. We can supply a fraction of it, and we're looking at markets in both North America and Europe, for example. We're doing a lot of work in understanding the opportunity for our basket long term, but they would be two areas where we're seeing significant deployment of capital in EVs and offshore wind turbine applications right now. In addition to that, there's a number of applications in key military, defence and communications that simply can't be developed without the products of the key rare earth elements from our basket. So we are really in a very good position to be I suppose the right partner for countries and governments that are looking at secure and traceable supply chains of heavy rare earths for the next 27, 30, 50 years. Certainly Makuutu has the potential to be a very long life asset, supplying these blend of highly desirable heavy rare earths, magnet and heavy rare earths.
And that's obviously part of your strategy. You're acquiring a UK technology firm, Siren Technologies. What is it that they have developed that have obviously complements your company's mission?
Yeah, so Seren Technologies, for the last 5 years, they've been sort of, further developing a technology that was initially developed with and patented by Queen's University Belfast and the Queen's University Ionic Liquids Laboratory. And so the technology uses ionic liquids to separate rare earths. It can achieve high separation factors, which effectively means that we can achieve the separations in less stages in the circuit. So they've done a lot of work over the last 5 years. We came across the technology last year. We identified a key opportunity and a potential fit. I think the opportunity for us, and while Seren Technologies and the technology they've developed is great, it really needs an asset to drive the full value of the project. Simply trying to market a technology to other companies who are looking at developing, light rare earth concentrates isn't hugely attractive. And when you're looking at a basket like Makuutu's, we certainly have the basket to get the full value out of the technology and to be able to, I suppose, take that technology and fully exploit it directly on the Makuutu basket. So, we saw an opportunity to move very quickly with that. But probably one of the most exciting opportunities with Seren is, they've done a lot of work in magnet recycling. They've developed the technology to be able to chemically extract the individual rare earth elements out of the spent waste magnets, which is, unique compared to a lot of other recycling technologies available today. So it's able to extract the rare earths, turn them back into high purity oxides, which can then go to making better quality new magnets for the future. So it's something that we're excited by. We've begun talks with potential magnet manufacturers who are also seeing this as a step change in magnet recycling capability. And once we finalise the acquisition of Seren, we'll be able to sort of start moving ahead with the strategy of commercialising this technology and potentially being able to move very quickly with a low capital modular deployments of magnet recycling across jurisdictions in Europe and North America over the next couple of years.
What strategy do you have in place for taking your project to market? And will you construct your own refinery?
Yeah, so we initially focused on what we needed to do to advance Makuutu to the point where we had a really good appreciation of the economics of Makuutu. We did that last year. We announced a scoping study. As we were working through that scoping study, I think we identified that realistically, to get the most value from the asset, we did have to start to think about how we would go downstream and how we potentially are able to unlock value, given that current world capacity on heavy rare earth refining is dominated by Chinese players and nearly completely controlled by Chinese entities. So, in looking at maximising the potential revenue of the basket from Makuutu, the plan really has been to look at going downstream, to look at vertical integration, working with potential customers in new supply chains, because the project and the ability to market our product is really restricted by our ability to actually bring the product and market it directly to end users. So we identified last year an opportunity to move ahead with our own thoughts around developing a rare earth refinery. So we initiated a scoping study. Prior to doing that, we completed a desktop study, which gave us a pretty good sanity check on the opportunity. And so on the back of that, we were very keen to move forward with that scoping study, and we'll have that completed later this year. We're working through a location analysis to better understand where potentially good locations for a rare earth refinery would be. And with that rare earth refinery, also understanding where potential other players in new and emerging rare earth supply chains would be located as well. So, we are trying to map out all of the individual components that would likely go into building new, secure and traceable supply chains for manufacturing and expected traceability for the future. So we've announced the strategy of becoming more vertically integrated, and over the course of the next few months, we'll continue to do more work and be in a position to be able to update the market later this year on where we see potentially whether it's one or more opportunities with going downstream with a refinery. It's really going to depend on who our strategic partner is and where we're positioning ourselves to build that supply chain long term.
What challenges has the company or even the project had, obviously during your time there, and also Uganda? What's it like as a mining jurisdiction? I'm not sure if I've had anyone on the podcast that's doing anything in Uganda, so it'd be good to hear what it is like, sort of mining in that jurisdiction. Yeah,
look, so Rob, I mean, challenges. We've just come through a two-year challenge with COVID, and I mean that's been testing at times. We've been able to progress the project really well over the last 2 years through our partners and through the network that we've been able to build in Africa and Uganda. So we've been able to complete 4 drilling programs in Uganda, which has been a tremendous activity from all of our team in Uganda and some of our partners and service providers down in South Africa and Burundi. So, we've been able to work really well together as a team over the last 2 years. We've navigated all of those challenges. We've worked closely with the communities in Uganda. I think we've demonstrated our desire to be very transparent and to try and do things in the best possible way in Uganda. And I think that's been well received. We're doing a lot of work at the moment on a community engagement and positioning ourselves to win that community and social license to operate from the stakeholders in Uganda. We've been able to complete the environmental and social impact assessment and submitted that late last year, and we hopefully will get feedback on that over coming months. And at the moment, we're working through the resettlement action plan. And these are key inputs that are required for a mining license application that we're looking at submitting later this year. As far as the support we've had in Uganda, we've had tremendous support and great engagement from the Ugandan authorities, the government departments. It really has been a very good experience for the company and our partners in Renzori Rare Metals over the last, certainly as long as I've been involved, so a bit over 2 years. We've had a very good engagement with the Ugandan government. We've got good service providers in Uganda, and we've worked really well together. And I think that there is substantial potential for other projects to be developed in Uganda in the near term. And I think hopefully on the back of our successes with Ionic and Renzori Rare Metals in developing the Makuutu Rare Earths project, that hopefully that becomes a bit of a signal to the rest of the industry that there are some really good opportunities in Uganda that should be explored.
With the movement to obviously a green economy and clean energy and technology, what's the outlook for the rare earths market?
Good question, Rob. I think it would be safe to say that more rare earths will be required. I think looking at the demand for EVs and offshore wind turbines, there's some stats that I've got in one of our presentations that sort of indicates an 8-fold increase in demand for EVs and offshore wind turbine just by the end of this decade. To think about bringing on an 8-fold demand on magnet rare earths is going to be extremely difficult for the industry because the assumption is that the rare earths are there. And whilst there's tremendous amounts of light rare earths, that simply can't be said for heavy rare earths. And that's why I think we're starting to see certainly the savvy investors understanding the opportunity with heavy rare earths. And, I suppose barring any major shift in the thematics around, renewables and sustainability and moving to net carbon targets or net zero carbon targets, there simply needs to be more production of magnet rare earths by the end of this decade and beyond to be able to achieve the ambitions of 2050 or 2060 or whenever these larger governments globally have set the targets of being net zero.
And is there a lot of exploration in rare earths and obviously heavy rare earths as well? Is there a lot of activity in the exploration space? And also, is there particular jurisdictions or even countries where there's probably going to be more of a resource where companies would go to obviously try and find larger resources and obviously better quality resources?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's been tremendous amount of development in the rare earth space over the last, certainly the last 12 months. I mean, we're seeing new companies on a monthly basis in the rare earth space, being listed globally. So there's a lot of exploration, a lot of work being done. A lot of light rare earth deposits are being found. That's great, but you only need a handful of light rare earth deposits to be able to supply substantial amounts of NdPr. What the world really needs to find is more supplies of heavy rare earths, and unfortunately, it's easier said than done. And I suppose therein lies, one of the other reasons why I was very keen to get involved with Makuutu is because it's being at 44% of our basket being heavy rare earths, or 73% magnet plus heavy rare earths, it is a very unique project and has tremendous appeal. As far as where does the next phase of exploration occur, my genuine feeling is that it'll go into areas that probably haven't had the exploration in the past in order to go and find these new resources. Sometimes if you want to find something, you've got to go and look where no one's looked before. And I think that means going into new jurisdictions where people maybe are not as familiar, and looking a little bit harder to try and find these unique assets and the assets that are really going to move the needle on magnet and heavy rare earth supply for the future.
And lastly, what's the outlook for the next 12 to 18 months for Ionic Rare Earths?
Yeah, so look, over the next 6 months, we're going to, it'll be a lot of hive activity as we work towards, completing the feasibility study and the mining license application. We've got the last of our phase 4 assays that hopefully will come out soon. We've got a mineral resource estimate that'll be completed soon, which, I'm expecting is going to be a very good, upgrade in confidence, and potentially the quantum for the overall scale of the resource at Makuutu, and with that potentially a significant impact then on the feasibility. And so yeah, very excited about what the near term holds for Ionic. We continue to do a lot of project development work, metallurgical test work. We're working still on the geotechnical work and the hydrology work and all of the inputs that feed into the feasibility study. Engineering is working through capital and operating cost estimation and sort of refining and value engineering on the overall flow sheet. And so hopefully that's all going to be completed in the next 6 months. We'll have a mining license application in before the end of October this year. And then once we've got that completed, we'll be then looking at a strategy to get Makuutu into production as soon as possible, or aligned with the needs of a strategic partner, and potentially looking at the timing of developing our own refinery. We're very conscious of Western demands to have secure, traceable and alternative supplies of permanent magnets being and coming online over the next 2025, 2026. So we are looking at ways in which we can be a key player in that space. And I suppose the other thing that's going to happen hopefully very shortly is the finalisation of the Seren Technologies acquisition, and being able to move with a little bit more purpose on accelerating the magnet recycling potential of what Seren's been doing, and with that potentially being able to bring on new supplies of magnet rare earths, and working on new supply chains in the near term on recycled materials. So we are working with a strategy of becoming more vertically integrated and working more closely with end users, and I suppose over the course of the next few months, hopefully we'll be in a position where we can update the market on some of the nature of those discussions as well. Yeah.
So a busy year ahead, it seems then.
Yeah, look, it is. It's we've got a big 12 months ahead of us, and if we're successful with that, we'll be rewarded with probably an even bigger 12 months after that. So success breeds success, and so we're hopeful that the next 12 months is going to be a great foundation for the company going forward.
Yeah. Well, Tim, I really appreciate your time in telling us more about Ionic Rare Earths and obviously your project, and give us an overview of obviously the rare earth industry. Obviously wish you well for the rest of this year. If you want to come back onto the podcast at the end of the year and give us an update, more than welcome. So for those that are listening, appreciate if you can share and like this episode, share it, obviously. Share the episode on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube. If you've listened to this on a podcast, appreciate if you can your continued support and sharing the podcast amongst others that you may work with, whether it's your subordinates, managers, etc. Appreciate you if you can share this episode and the podcast as well, because obviously it is an education. We don't have many people coming onto the podcast that talk about rare earths, and obviously Tim's explained an important project around heavy rare earths, and I think it's important for the wider mining community to learn about this. So again, appreciate your time, Tim.
Thanks, Rob. It was great.
All the best for this year, and until next time, happy mining.